Hello, everybody. Welcome in to the Irish Guys Podcast YouTube channel and to our other listeners on Spotify and all the podcast streaming platforms. Welcome back. Um, we've been a little bit stuck at the minute just with everything that's going on, as you all know. So we've been doing, YouTube videos and stuff like that there. But it's been fine. Vestie's done a few podcasts on the road and stuff like that, so it's been good. But I just thought, I'd keep doing the YouTube videos and stuff like that too, but now I've kind of got everything sort of set a little bit. Got the mixer in, got the microphones back in, so the video on the YouTube will go up as it has been this last while, and then, I'm going to throw these out on the podcast streaming platforms as well. So, I also bought myself one of the nice little ring light things, and the phone's sitting up there recording all now too, so hopefully when the lads get back and we can get recording again proper, we can improve it a little bit and see what way we're going. I think the audio as far as the podcast is coming out okay, maybe a little bit quiet this last while, but I'm working on that too. So the podcast is getting better, I think. And then as I said, we've got this wee I'm using my phone. It's got a decent enough camera, and hopefully when the boys are back in, it'll be a bit of crack, and we can actually record the thing on video if they want to do that. Hopefully they do. But it'll probably just add a wee bit to the podcast. Like a lot of podcasts now are sort of all video as well. People do like to watch them in their off time as well. I know that the audio is handy for when you're in the likes of work or on a commute or something like that, but people do like to sit down and watch them, and maybe it'll be a little bit better. I think people like to see your face. Weirdly enough, I do know that there too as well. Watching and seeing people podcasting as well. So, yeah. As far as what we've been doing recently, just with we do obviously our nerd culture stuff, and then we do a lot of sport, obviously as well. The NFL, football, all that. But just with recently, the nerd culture stuff's great. As far as having the boys in, and we get a bit of a laugh and end up shouting at each other and stuff like that. So that's always a good bit of a laugh. But we haven't got doing too much of that recently because obviously we haven't been recording. So I thought I'd do something as far as the nerd culture stuff. It's something that myself probably won't get to talk about in the podcast too often, but it's something that we already touched upon in numerous podcasts. So I thought I'd give something a wee bit of a rattle, just put it out there. I've done, as I said, I've done a right few football ones and NFL ones and stuff now, basketball. So I thought I'd do something a little different. And I'll throw a wee bit of a nerd culture one out because it's just one that I can't, I'll probably not get talking on the podcast too much about for the time being anyway. We've done a sort of little book series, little book book review, book recommendation type thing on the podcast. I think we've maybe four episodes of it out now. It's usually one of our Wednesday evening podcasts. We usually do the quizzes and just anything else that we feel like. We've done an album one as well, our favourite albums. So it's just really anything that we decide outside the realms of the things that we normally cover to throw out in a Wednesday evening. But as I said, we've done a few of the book ones. They've been good. I've really enjoyed them. Tom did one early on with me, and then I think Vestie's done one or two as well. So they're a good laugh, and people do like to read and stuff as well, and hopefully you're enjoying them. So I thought I'd do one in that vein, because it's really the only one that I can do. As I said, we've got some great topics as far as like the Mandalorian and stuff and all coming once we get the chance to actually get in the room again. But save them for when the boys are back. But as I said, I thought I would do something just book related because it's probably not something that I'll get talking about too much, at the time being anyway. If you've listened to our book podcasts, we have a couple out, and on a couple of them, I think Tom on the first one, and then Vesty on the second one, talked about the Wheel of Time. We've hinted about it and talked a little bit about it on the podcast a few times. Sort of referenced it, and as I said, we've did two podcasts on it. Vesty and Tom took a dive into it. I sort of roped them into reading it with me, because I need somebody to talk to it about. And I think them two men are fairly enjoying it. I think Tom's probably a little bit further on than Vesty. I think he's maybe up to around book 6 or something along those lines. Vesti, maybe book 3. I think he's maybe book 3 now. He covered book 2 in the podcast, so he's definitely on book 3 anyway. But yeah. So within the last, over Christmas and everything, I finished the series. And I thought I would do like a little. I thought the best way to do it, or the best way to probably cover this, is to compare it, and because it's a massive fantasy series, and you think when it's something like that there that everybody's heard of it, and I hadn't heard of it until 2 years ago, or give or take, maybe 2.5 years ago now at this stage, and I decided to tackle it. I'd read a little bit of like fantasy and stuff, when I was younger and that, and then I kind of got out of reading for a number of years, and then just kind of in this last 3 or 4 years kind of this last 3 years really probably dived back into it like a good bit. But when you think of when like you're on my side now and you kind of think of like a series like it that you finished, you think like, how has nobody else ever heard of this? But I hadn't heard of it until, as I said, 2.5 years ago. And it is a brilliant series. It's one of them ones, like I hadn't really heard of A Song of Ice and Fire, or I'd just been out of the loop really more than anything. And I thought I would do like a little comparison / trying to sell you on it, type thing for the Wheel of Time. Because well, one, I need somebody to talk to about it, but it's a massive undertaking. It's a fantasy series. It's an absolutely great one. And I thought I would try and bounce it off Lord of the Rings, at least a little bit, to try and sell some people on it. This is sort of very specific, very niche. If you're not into this sort of stuff, it's not really going to be for you at all. Like, but just with the sort of success in recent years of like Game of Thrones, and the success that even the Lord of the Rings movies had and stuff, I was just going to try and sell it a little bit, and I'm going to use Lord of the Rings as like a sort of stepping off point and like a bit of a comparison and a clash, because it's so well known, Lord of the Rings. Like, even if you're not a massive fan of this genre, everybody knows Lord of the Rings, and I thought that it's just like a good little barometer, a good little comparison for people to bounce off, and maybe after this video or whatever you might decide to tackle it, and if it gives you sort of a Lord of the Rings type feel, then you might enjoy it. I did it in mind with the fact that there is a series coming for this book series. It's being produced by Amazon, and I really, really want it to do well, obviously, for good reason. You kind of want to see these deadly books come to the big screen and do very well, or silver screen, is it, I think, with TV? I'm not sure, but I would like to see this do well, and Amazon do have a Lord of the Rings TV series in production as well, so it's going to be battling it directly, just for viewership and that. And I worry a little bit because Lord of the Rings has got that mass appeal. Like, if you just say that there's a Lord of the Rings series coming, it's obviously going to gain more viewership, and hopefully then it doesn't take away from what the Wheel of Time is and can be as far as a series, TV series. So I thought I'd bounce it off it. A little bit, if you have listened or haven't, if you have listened, there will be no spoilers, by the way, in this. I should have probably said that earlier. I'll put it in the title. There won't be any, I'm not going to do any spoilers or anything, because that's shite, especially if I'm trying to sell you on it. But, yeah, so the Wheel of Time's a fantasy series. It's set in sort of like medieval, times as well. If, think Lord of the Rings, and that sort of era. It was written in the 90s and into the mid 2000s, and then into the sort of 20-teens as well. The author's Robert Jordan, a really, really good author, and he is similar to Tolkien in some ways, but he was more modern. Tolkien obviously started, I think it was in the 50s or something, 30s, 40s. I'm not entirely sure. We covered it. We covered it in our Lord of the Rings trio of podcasts that we did a while back. But this was written in the 90s. So it's a little bit more modern as far as its writing style and stuff. Tolkien's very sort of old-timey in a way, and but yeah, this is a little bit more modern in that way. It's a massive 14-book series, so it's a little bit daunting in that way. But I'm not only trying to sell you on the book series. I'm trying to sell you on this TV series that's coming too, and it's a bit of an undertaking. Like, it took me over just over about 2 years to finish it. with taking some breaks away from it and reading other things as well. So, it's a big long series, 14 books. There's books that are over 1,000 pages. Some of them as short as maybe 600, 700. There's not really any small books in this series, but it's a fantastic little fantasy series, and just gonna try and sell you on it. So yeah, as I said, set in them sort of times and stuff. It's got magical and fantasy elements in it throughout it, woven throughout it, as you would expect. But it's unique in its own way. I don't like, as I said, I genuinely never heard of it, and when it's when it's been that big, and it has been that big for me now, I kind of wonder, how nobody else has ever heard of it, even though I hadn't. But the world is huge. The world that it's set in is absolutely massive. There's sort of a central continent with, multiple realms, kingdoms, regions, and then there's other regions, islands, further afield nations that you only find out about and figure out about as the series goes on, and there's so much to dive into. It's the expanse of the world in general. Is fascinating. There's it's as I said, it's one central region, one central continent, and then other things surrounding it that we don't even find out about until later in the series. As you would expect with a 14-book series, you have time to develop, and Robert Jordan definitely uses every bit of time that he had. As I said, the world's massive, the expanse, but it's really unique too. It's got that sort of Tolkien sort of there is good and evil elements in it. That's the way it is. There is good and evil elements in it, but it takes on its own unique spin. It's not a rip off. It's not anything like that at all. It puts its own unique spin on it, and in some ways improves it. There is different races of people, different races of humans. They've all got their own unique cultures, societies. Some of them that you don't learn about. Some of them are more complex than others, and it's a massive expanse of a series, and it's a massive expanse of a world. The cultures in it are fantastic. The Aiel, for example, are a sort of warring culture, a hardened culture that live in the desert, and everything that comes with that. There's a seafaring race as well that are unique to obviously like fishing, shipbuilding and stuff like that there. And then within the central continent as well, there's different regions that carry on and act in completely different ways. There's sort of nearly like a cutthroat area as well. A city that's sort of riddled with cutthroats. Some cities are the crown and jewel of the continent, and others are dark, dingy, rough, horrible places, and it's got everything in between. So yeah, there's also, I suppose, in the world, the area, if the Mordor of the world, there is that. It's called the Blasted Lands and stuff as well. There's the Mordor of there as well. It's unique and it's got a different spin in its own way. I won't say that Robert Jordan didn't definitely have influences from J.R.R. Tolkien. You can definitely see them, and if you listen to our first book podcast that Tom tackled, The Eye of the World, which is the first book in the series, is somewhat of an ode to J.R.R. Tolkien. It's very similar to the Fellowship of the Ring, but don't let that off put you. If you think that there's maybe sort of a little, this is just going to be a rip-off or something like that, definitely don't take it in that vein. It was written in that way to sort of give a nod to J.R.R. Tolkien, but it's really, really good. It has a sort of central narrative of following a group of characters as they always do. It's sort of fellowship, if you like. A group of young people from a small farming village, and it's got a diverse cast. Women are very heavily centered in this series, exceedingly heavily. They're nearly men are men are very vital to the plot, but women in this series hold kingdoms. They are the in the beginning anyway. They are the main culture as far as they are witches. Not in an evil sense, in a sort of old, wise wizard Gandalf sense. And women are the forefront in that as well. Um, but it follows a group of young people on their journey. They are sort of, it's kind of a chosen one type thing, but there's a larger group of them. Um, and in one way or another, I think that there's so many characters in this, and there's a character nearly for everybody. Most everybody that I've talked has got a different character. I think that you like, so many of the characters. Some of the side characters are phenomenal. Um, I think I've mentioned it in the podcast a few times, in movies, TV series, maybe anime a little bit too and stuff. More so anime for the rest of the fellas, Tom and Dev and stuff. But I sort of dislike a little bit of. I dislike main characters a little bit. I really take to some of the lesser known side characters, but the side characters in this are phenomenal too. And with the world being so big, so expansive, so massive, there is sort of close knit side characters, and then there's a wider array of side characters as well, which is, fantastic. There's so much to sink your teeth into, so much culture to sink your teeth into, so much lore and backstory to sink your teeth into. It's got something for everybody, It's got a little bit of the Game of Thrones sort of stuff. The world's not perfect in any way, shape, or form. If you think of the likes of like Littlefinger, the backstabbing, the Targaryens and stuff that come with Game of Thrones, A Song of Ice and Fire. There's nothing perfect about this world either. A lot of some of Tolkien's work on early fantasy, obviously, sort of good versus evil, and there's not too much in between. There's a little bit, but this world is by no means perfect. There's slavery. There's it's dark. There's horror in this series as well. You think of the Fades, the sort of evil characters in it. There is elements of horror in this. There's warring factions and clashes and old rivalries and old vendettas and stuff, as far as different countries and regions and things of that nature. There's politics and backstabbing. I really like that element as far as Game of Thrones went. The sort of politics and the backstab. You do think of somebody immediately like Littlefinger, but it's got all that as well. There's religion, and the warring clashes and cultures of religion and what they believe in, as well. There's religious zealots, essentially, that are sort of on like a crusade almost, that run the way right through the story, as well. There's so many different, as I said, there's so many different elements, factions, and things to sink your teeth into in that way. Tractor, every time. But yeah, there's so much to get into, and there is things that you'll see in this story as well that are familiar. There is a dark lord, dark element in this story that is set up to be the obstacle for our main characters. And like I said, when we did our Lord of the Rings trio of podcasts, if it's just the Lord of the Rings, Sauron isn't really a sort of fully fledged, well realized character just within the story of the Lord of the Rings. Obviously, there's the Silmarillion and other things that you can get back into, but he's not an in-depth character. It's very much good versus evil. You think then maybe possibly of something similar in A Song of Ice and Fire, of the White Walkers. There's lore surrounding the White Walkers and stuff, but there isn't really much. It's just an evil entity. Now there is that in this, but the great thing about this story is, and why I like some of the real dark characters, is that yes, the evil entity is behind everything, pulling the strings and manipulating stuff and everything, somewhat maybe like a Sauron or White Walkers and stuff. They're ever present, but his minions in this story, his Forsaken as they're known, are 12, 13 characters that are fully realized characters, complex characters, dark characters, human characters in a way, and they have such an influence over the story. And then below that, you have even um, more characters that are associated with the dark side, if you want to go that far. You think of the likes of maybe like a Grima Wormtongue or something like that in Lord of the Rings that are affiliates, sort of scoundrels, dark people that have sort of been turned against them, and the way they infiltrate the story throughout, as far as even the more powerful Forsaken ones, and even these sort of lowly people, they're infiltrating the story from all angles. There's so many twists and turns, so many people that you question that are maybe dark or maybe evil that aren't, and then some that you never see coming, which is always good. Um, you know, as I said, like they have like that sort of like Nazgul element in maybe the Lord of the Rings, but think maybe more of like Death Eaters and Harry Potter. You know the character a little bit more. You don't know too much about the Nazgul as far as Lord of the Rings goes, but Harry Potter, you kind of Bellatrix and that there as well. You kind of learn a little bit more about their characters, and they sort of blend the elements of the Nazgul maybe a little, and Death Eaters. You learn their human characters in a way, and they kind of they've got the human elements. You learn about why they turned, why they went the opposite way, different things about them, a bit about their history. Some of them did it for power. Some of them did it logically, in a way. Some of them, had other goals, and they are great. They're great characters, and some of them get a little bit more airtime. Some of them don't. There's 13 of them. They manipulate the world in different ways. Some of them are more to the forefront. Some of them like to manipulate from behind the scenes. Some of them are more, what would you say? Tough. There's women and men involved. And a great array of characters. But as I said earlier, there's so many likable characters in it too. You'll be drawn till as the story goes on, you'll actually be drawn to some characters that you didn't think that you would like. Some characters will step forward and change your opinion. I think that there's a character that everybody can relate to a little bit, and you'll definitely have your favourites. I know Tom, I think his favourite character is Perrin. Mine's probably Matt, but there's other characters, some of the side characters. Rhuarc, who's an Aiel, who I loved from the very beginning. There's Lan. There's so many different characters, so many side characters, and then because the world is so big, as I said earlier, there's so many, further out characters that you'll grab a little attachment to as well. Some characters come in late in the story as well too, that haven't been there, and really make an impression. And as I said, you'll even grow to like some of the villains. Like, everybody needs a good villain, everybody likes a good villain, but as I said, Sauron isn't really relatable, and some of them you'll like. I liked Littlefinger. I was always waiting for him for his like, I hated Joffrey, hated him, but like Littlefinger, you were waiting for his comeuppance and his sort of scheming and skiving, was so good throughout the story that you couldn't wait to see his end, but you wanted him to stay alive like another little while. There's so much good stuff in it. You think of the likes of Boromir too. There's characters on the good side that like Boromir that things happen that lead them down a different path and stuff too. There's morally grey characters on the good side as well. Some people turn in that fashion as well too, and I think everybody reading it reads it in a different way. There's so much to read into. There's so many characters, and like I think I explained in one of the podcasts that Tom's girlfriend was reading the series at the time, and she picked up on something that none of us picked up on, that there was like a little love interest in a certain way, and I didn't see it coming, didn't feel, had no feel for it or anything, and she picked up on it immediately. And I think that there's different characters that can really pull you in. I think everybody can be drawn to somebody else, and as I said, there's some people that you thought that you would never like. As the series goes on, you grow to love. Like, one of the biggest and most popular characters in the series is Matt Cawthon, and the first 3 books, really, Matt has something happens to him, and he's kind of not forgotten about, but his character development is very slow in the beginning. but as the series goes on, the story goes on, he just gets better and better and better. And I'd heard about how good he was coming into the series, and at the start I was a little bit, well, he's not that great. But as the series went on, just absolutely fantastic. And some people that were sort of minor in the beginning become very key very later on. And that sort of leads me to, some of the foretelling, some of the little nuggets that you get throughout the plot, and the way the plot is structured the entire way through. Like I think I said in a few of them podcasts, there's something that happens at the very end of the second book, and you don't get the payoff until book 9. That sounds kind of daunting at times, and it was, no doubt about it. I had to take breaks from the series, but it was like when you picked up on them or something happened, you were like, oh my god, this is unbelievable. It's really, really enjoyable in that way too. And it's got everything in it. It's got giant, horrific, massive wars. Think of Helm's Deep on steroids as well too, and Helm's Deep was one of the the best scenes that was put to movie from a book, I would say. And there's battles like that. It has a crescendo nearly in book 6 with a massive battle, a massive clash, and then it sort of tails off a little and then comes back with obviously the big ending. And it's a really fantastic book series. Is everything perfect in it? Definitely not. Some things that can throw people is, Robert Jordan is an incredibly descriptive writer. He was heavy with his description. He would tell you about everything that a person's wearing and what a building looked like. But it just really, for some less avid readers, that's maybe a bit too much, and it can be. But for somebody that really likes that sort of stuff, and I did appreciate it. Now it can wear on you a little, but I did appreciate it, and it really helped develop the world and everything too. It's got its magical elements too. As I said, there is magic users in this. And one thing that Robert Jordan created that was something very, very different and unique. He put stakes on it. Men that want to use, I don't think this is really spoiling anything, but men that want to use the magic within the world become insane over time. It was something left by the evil entity in this from a previous era, and I thought it was just a really unique thing. So at the when at the beginning of the story, when men start to channel, which is the term they use for controlling magic in this, they ultimately know that they're going to go insane, which ups the stakes and raises the stakes, because a man with that power going insane is incredibly dangerous. And the Aes Sedai, who are the women, witches or wizards, a lot of their purpose is to control men that have this power and stuff like that too, stilling them by removing the power from them or corralling them or getting hold of them early so that they don't go insane and destroy everything. But it's a unique little spin that he put on his story, that there is consequences for using magic in this world. Now the women don't have it, men do. And I just thought it was a really unique little spin. As I said, is everything perfect with the series? No. A lot of people will be turned off by his descriptive writing style and whatnot. Was there perfect resolutions to every story and every storyline? One sticks out to mind of not being great. A sort of minor storyline that runs through the entirety of the series, but was it finished perfectly? Probably not, but as a whole the series was finished fantastically well. As I should also probably say that Robert Jordan died before he finished the series, and a younger author at the time, Brandon Sanderson, stepped in to finish it out and wrote the last 3 books. So the way that he stepped in and I was really looking forward to finishing the series. Really, really looking forward to it. And he finished it out masterfully. There is the sort of the slog, they call it, in the middle of the series. The first 6 books I feel are fantastic, out of this world. Some of the best stuff I've ever read as far as fantasy goes. And then there's a little bit of a tail off. There is a bit of a crescendo in book 6. Something very major and big happens. And then books 7 and 8 are a little bit slower. Could probably have been one book. But book 9 again is a little bit slow, but there's a lot of key things that happen. and then book 10 is again a little bit slow. Book 11, 12, 13 and 14 are the culmination of the story, and a slow build back into, there was that sort of massive crescendo in book 6, a little bit of a time to tell the story and a few major things to happen within the next few, and then just a build in the last 3 or 4 books to really round the series out, which was, as I said, so worth it, so worthwhile. It took a lot of time and effort and stuff, but like when it was finished, and I'd finished the 14 books, it was so good. The payoff for it was just so good. There's so much to get into, there's so much to enjoy, so much to learn about, so many things that you've probably missed, and we'll come back to and look at, and just so many wee nuggets and everything. The series is absolutely outstanding. I feel like it's hard. I feel like it's hard to top Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings has got so much nostalgia. Like we did a three podcasts on Lord of the Rings, and they were some of the best ones we done, I think. And as far as downloads go, they're some of the best ones we done as well. Everybody really likes Lord of the Rings, and it's hard to say that I think this series is better, because Lord of the Rings holds so much nostalgia. But what I will say is, if there is anybody that was like me in a way and hadn't moved on from like Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter's, all the usuals, and there's a series that you want to get into, and you do like that sort of like classic fantasy Tolkien style kind of a little bit, Wheel of Time's really good. To people that maybe aren't into it or whatever, maybe aren't into reading, especially that size of a series. It took me a long time to get my head around it too, but because I, as I said, I had sort of stepped away from reading for a number of years and hadn't really read anything of that nature, sort of more sport books and stuff. But it's fantastic and well worth it. But to somebody that's maybe not into reading that length of a series, there is Amazon is doing the TV show, and it is coming soon. It's recording right now. I think the first season's going to be out maybe towards the end of this year or the start of next year, and we'll maybe get covering it a little bit more on the podcast, and closer to the time, maybe Vesti will maybe want to do another book review for book 3 of it or something along those lines, and then we can get into it a little bit. But the end of the series was fantastic. I really hope, and just concluding the entire series was so good and so enjoyable and so worth it. But I really hope that even if there is people that are maybe watching this video or whatever that aren't even thinking about tackling that size of a book series, give the TV show a rattle. And it will be a little bit Lord of the Rings vibe to begin with, but do give it a chance, because it's going to be, if they get it and get it right. And the only worry that I have is that it is actually directly going against Lord of the Rings as far as Amazon are producing both, and it just worries me that Lord of the Rings will have the mass appeal from the very beginning, and I'm not sure maybe Wheel of Time will or won't. But as I said, it's a series that I had never heard of at all until recently, and it's really good. It is as good, I think, in a way. There's an awful lot to get into, so many likable characters, so much diverse cast, culture, everything, and it's really close. But Lord of the Rings probably still shades it on nostalgia. But yeah, if you aren't into sort of tackling that size of a series, do give the TV show a go when it comes out. And I thought I would just try and sell you on it a little. As I said at the beginning, we're making do as best we can, and we do like to keep the nerd stuff as far to the boys who are in the room, because they're always the ones that are the best crack. We have a good laugh, shout at each other, talk about movies and stuff of that nature, TV shows and all. So if you're a newer listener or watcher on YouTube, we have nerd culture stuff surrounding movies, TV series, video games a little bit too, stuff of that nature, and then we do cover a lot of international sports, basketball, NFL, sporting moments, other things, wee bits and pieces, and then we do a lot of football as well. So if you're a new listener, we are the Irish Guys Podcast on YouTube, Amazon Music, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Podbean. Depending on where you're watching, give us a follow on the podcast apps. If you're subscribe to the YouTube channel, if that's where you're tuning in. As I said, we're working on stuff. We got the new light, which is fantastic. So maybe, as I said, we were audio only for a while. We turned around and, with the lockdown and everything, we've tried to adapt a little bit, throwing more stuff up on YouTube, wee videos and that. So we're getting there. Hopefully the boys will be back shortly, and we can maybe, as I say, put the podcast out in full video form as well as our normal podcast streaming platforms, because I know YouTube is good and easier to watch. You'll see a bit more of the cabin, which is good crack, but you'll see what we do and sort of the makeshift place that we're working in, as for now, but we'll see. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I wanted to just do this one because we haven't put anything nerd culture-y out since before Christmas, just because of the lockdown and that, and yeah, hopefully you enjoyed it, and that'll do me for now. Thanks very much for watching, listening, wherever you are, and yeah, cheers, thank you.